All right, hey guys. So in this video, we're going to talk about the problems that are the problem that Durkheim is trying to address. Remember, he was talking about the fact that human beings need to be regulated by a morality in order to have fulfilling lives. Social facts were the key to getting that morality into people. So everything seems like it's going to be fine until we hit the 19th century. And in the 19th century, as we talked about in week one, we end up with this great transformation of moving from feudalism into a market economy. We talk about liberalism that is creating more and more freedom for people. We end up with the French Revolution based on that, and everything becomes much less stable, much less orderly. And so Durkheim is going to try to figure out, okay, so we don't want to go backwards. So how can we reestablish that? But for right now, let's talk about the problem that comes in the 19th century specifically, because there's a key term for Durkheim, a couple of them actually, that we will get to. So for context, Durkheim's writing in the beginning of the 1900s, end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s, about 100 years since the French Revolution. In that time, France has had 3 monarchies, 2 empires, 3 republics, 14 constitutions. So it has been chaos for 100 years in France. And for a guy who says that human beings need society, society is the only thing that can allow them to have fulfilling lives, this is a horrible crisis. He needs to be able to understand it and to be able to figure out what we can do about it, because people's lives being fulfilling or not hang in the balance. So he says, all right, he thinks about it, and Durkheim is super analytical. And so he's looking at those changes that we talked about, the Lockean revolution that makes us more free, the Adam Smith's market revolution that creates this industrial revolution that is wreaking havoc on people's lives. And he says, okay, so why though? Why would these things have happened? We understood intellectually that that these things were changing during the late 1800s. Well, in the 1800s, because Locke's writing in the, or I'm sorry, Locke writes at the end of the 1600s. Smith writes at the end of the 1700s. So we see this coming intellectually. But what's going on that would have created the need for this in the first place? And here's where below the level of intellectual philosophy, this is what is going on. He said it's a change in dynamic density. Dynamic density is a term that encompasses 2 components. It is, first of all, just the number of people in a society, the number of people in a specific space, which makes sense. That's what density involves in terms of physics and mathematics. But the idea of dynamic refers to the amount of interaction that occurs among them, because you can see it's just one thing if we started out with 100 farmers in a county and we moved to 200 farmers. It's more dense, but if everybody's living basically the same life, it's going to be problematic, but it's not going to create the same types of problems that if we go from 100 farmers to 200 people who are working in factories and in farming and in shipping and all these different things. He said the quantity of interactions is also a variable that we have to take into account. He said that more people increases the competition for scarce resources. Remember, we're in this county and it's still the same number of trees and same amount of land and same amount of water. So there's more competition. But the more that people interact, the more that they are connected, and not necessarily in a good way, but interacting with all these other people, the more intense the struggle is for survival. So what happens? Now, this is, Durkheim is talking about what happened in the past. And he says, okay, so what happened was humans came up with a kind of a clever solution to this problem of dynamic density. And that solution is the division of labor. And let me scroll down on my script. The division of labor, and Marx is going to have problems with this, so put Marx on hold for just a second. Durkheim is following Adam Smith, and he says, well, think about what the division of labor does, is it allows a whole bunch of individuals to cooperate in order to produce the things that are needed for society. I might, I might be a person who works in a shoe factory, and maybe I'm the person who sews the sole of the shoe on, but somebody else is poking the holes for the laces, and somebody else is snipping the tongue of the shoe, and somebody else is doing whatever else happens in shoes. And we're all cooperating. Whereas if we were all farming, we would be in competition for each other's land as more and more people showed up. So the division of labor, again, pausing Marx for a second, going with Adam Smith's idea, allows us to cooperate to create, to solve the problems of survival that we have. This is great. And not only do we cooperate, but we're able to do it more efficiently. So more and more people, we can support more people by producing things so much more efficiently than we did when we were all on our own. Okay, Marx would say, what are you talking about? This is cooperation. Have you seen the slums of London? Have you seen the people starving? Have you seen children working in factories? Are you paying attention? Yes, you're right, Marx. All that deprivation is definitely happening too. But, well, Durkheim's going to have an answer to that actually in a lecture or two. For right now, let's put Marx's what's the word, protest against this aside for just a second and say, okay, yeah, the division of labor is doing these things. At least that's what how Durkheim understood it. So then it creates another problem. We've solved the problem of our material well-being. And I mean, if you think about America being able to support 330 million people, it's because of this division of labor that we're able to do this. So there is an argument on that side. But Durkheim said, okay, so you've solved that problem. We've dealt with the dynamic density problem. But remember, that doesn't make people's lives fulfilling. In order for people to have fulfilling lives, we have to have a strong common morality. And that was relatively easy when we all had the same experiences in our life. It was easy for us to see things in the same way. That's no longer the case. So if we are going to have this division of labor, how do we keep a strong common morality that's going to regulate us so that we can have fulfilling lives if our experiences can be so different from one another's? That's going to be the problem that Durkheim is going to want to deal with, and that is the problem that we're going to explore in the rest of this lecture series. All right.